And it's a PR nightmare. I talk about this
Why?
all the time because you didn't have to do if you do something and you have to come back and apologize.
That's life. That's life. You never. So what? You just don't want to go. You don't want to apologize in life. It happens. People do things. He's 23 years old. This is the pinnacle of his athletic
He's
career.
25. Rodney, I think it's time for us to have a real conversation about Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, right? We've seen him the last 2 seasons do things that we've never seen a quarterback do at Vanderbilt University. He led them to their first 10-win season. He was a Heisman finalist. He received 189 first-place votes, but ultimately came up short in the Heisman voting to Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana, which didn't come as a surprise to anybody. But after the Heisman ceremony, we saw him post F all the voters, right? We saw him in the club shooting birds with the F Indiana sign, with the bottle girls. And it seems as though he's gone from this underdog that everybody was kind of rooting for to somebody that nobody's rooting for now. Like, we're kind of like done with him. What do you make? We are. I think a lot of people are. He's a laughingstock now. People are making jokes about him. But let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about your thoughts on Diego Pavia. And do you feel like if this was a quarterback that was a little darker in hue?
Well, let's get there on the back end. Let's get there on the back end. So I don't have a problem with any of these things that Diego has been doing. I think that we are finally getting to witness an athlete, not finally, because it's happened before, but he's just an athlete who wants people to hear his most inner dialogue and inner thoughts. Like everybody who wins the Heisman, who feels like they really should have won it, who really feels like they were in contention to actually win it, has these thoughts. He's just somebody who's living them out loud. And the fact of the matter is, like, Diego is really like 5'8". And he is a kid from New Mexico who did not have a single Division I scholarship coming out of high school, had to go to JUCO route, had to go to New Mexico, and then transfer into Vanderbilt. So his plight has been very different than a lot of other elite prospects who have been on that Heisman stage. And so he probably has had to have this kind of mentality in order to even maximize the potential that exists in his little tiny frame. So I really don't have any qualms, any issues with him just being truthful about his thoughts. If we were to hear Michael Jordan say this, right? Michael Jordan has created enemies in his head, and so has Shaquille O'Neal. We hear those stories about them, but their legacy is cemented. And so when we hear the stories from them, it's like, it's okay. But Diego really has the same kind of mentality. He just hasn't had the same level of success as them. So the idea that he would say these things out loud just doesn't seem PC for some people, but I'm all for athletes being this honest about how they feel. He's a competitor.
I think there's a difference between you reflecting on something years down the line and you say, you know what, like when I was at the Heisman and I came in second, I really wanted to say F the voters, F Indiana. That's how I felt at the time. I think there's a difference between that and actually doing it in real time, right? You just mentioned that Diego Pavia is only 5'8", right? So he does not have the intangibles of what we would consider an elite quarterback's build, right? So he's already coming into this year's draft as an underdog just in general because he's so small. So now we're not even talking about, in those interviews, we're not even talking about all of the things that you can do on the field. We're talking about off the field stuff. And it's a PR nightmare. I talk about this all the time because you didn't have to do, if you do something and you have to come back and apologize.
That's life. That's life. So what? You just don't want to go, you don't want to apologize in life? It happens. People do things. He's 23 years old. This is the pinnacle of his athletic career.
He's 25.
This is the pinnacle of his athletic career. He will never have a moment to live in anything of this magnitude again.
That's what I'm saying. And instead of him just being in the moment and having this moment with his family and friends who have been there with him this entire time, you're sitting here disrespecting other people. It was very classless. It was very distasteful. Rodney, it was bad. It was bad. And I thought that it left a stain on Vanderbilt. So I know some people in Nashville. So my first one is from my guy Gentry that's in Nashville. And he says, it's truly unfortunate that a spectacular Heisman weekend for Vanderbilt will be forever associated with a classless, unnecessary social media post that did nothing but validate reasons people had already had to dislike Diego Pavia. And that's what I'm saying. It's stuff like that. It's like,
where's Diego going next year? He has to go be a salesman. Like, what are we talking about,
Rodney? But why is it so bad that people are expecting you to have class in these moments? Like, we need to bring back shame, and that's what we're doing. This
is not a moment to be shameful about, to be upset about the fact that you didn't win a Heisman Trophy because you feel like you had the best season.
Why are you upset? That's what we're trying to say. There was no reason for him to get mad in this way, but to go and say F the voters, and then to say F Indiana, like, it was just completely out of line, right?
Bro, Vanderbilt and Indiana have very similar scholastic profiles. So even just on a football level, if he was about to play Indiana this weekend and he came out and said F Indiana, you wouldn't have a problem with that. So like the fact that he's like, yo, that kid took my trophy, F him, that's just how that's human. That's how humans feel. I don't know why we're pretending like we don't have emotions of jealousy and anger and frustration. Like the idea that we have to suppress our truest thoughts and feelings all the time, I think it's just counterculture to what's healthiest for people. Again, this is a kid who at 25 years old will never probably see a football field ever again. And so in lieu of being able to like be in that moment and look into the next year, 2, 5, 10 years from now and be like, damn, this is the pinnacle of like my athletic career. I'll never have a moment like this ever again in life. Like, I'm frustrated by that. And yeah, he verbalized it, he let it out, and then he apologized. Cool, that's life. But acting like you got to go through life never saying or doing anything worth apologizing for is just not human. Like, I'm kind of bewildered by the idea that you don't understand why he's frustrated or upset that he didn't win the highest award in all of college football.
I did not say that, though. That's the thing. I never said that he had no reason to be upset. What I said was that was a PR nightmare and that he shouldn't have done that. You can have these conversations for himself, for the university, for all of the people, like his family.
That university, man. What does Vanderbilt? What does Vanderbilt do for him after he's gone? I'm just saying, like, he didn't represent the university well. These coaches pick up and go at any given moment. We have school shootings going on. This is not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Like, who cares about Vanderbilt University? They're not going to cut him a paycheck next year when he's gone. He's disposable to them. So next year they'll have somebody else behind center playing quarterback, and Diego will be somebody that they remembered, and that's it. History's not going to look back on him on these 2 years that he had at Vanderbilt and be like, man, I really wish we had somebody else that was a lot more honest or a little less honest about how he felt inside because he lost the Heisman. Like, nobody cares. They got 10 wins in history that has never happened before at Vanderbilt. That's how and what he will be remembered for, not these words of frustration and anger.
Okay. Well, hopefully Vanderbilt has another player that gets to the Heisman ceremony. We'll see.
And goes crazy and goes even crazier.
No, don't.
SMD.
It's not necessary.
You BANs.
Rodney,
Nothing is necessary.
This is what is so weird to me about when you have these takes. Is because you grew up with a mother who was famous, right? Like who was talented. You're talented. You've been in the spotlight, and you know how important public relations are to your career. You know that. So that's what I'm saying. You would never get here and show your ass like that. You know
that.
No,
I don't.
Because that wasn't.
No, I don't.
Rodney, yes, you do.
And to be frank,
in Hollywood. Why would
to be frank, I wish I had this. I'm just old, and so I wasn't indoctrinated by the idea that you could say and do whatever you wanted to do. This kid is a byproduct of where we are as a society. But if I had a little more effort in my blood, I would be a lot further along. And I wish I had that level of freedom, yo. I marvel at that. I marvel at it. For real.
Okay, let's get into the real conversation because this is crazy. I saw that Skip Bayless tweeted, basically congratulations to Fernando. However, Diego Pavia deserved the award for his performance on the field, even if his swagger and edge rubbed some voters the wrong way. So I thought it was very interesting that for Diego, it was considered swagger and edge, right? But for Shedeur last year, it was arrogance. And he does not have class. That is weird. That's really weird. Also, Jamel Hill, who I love, she said that Rex Ryan and some other folks in the media who play behavior police would have done a 2-hour primetime special on this if it was Shedeur saying F the Heisman voters.
I'm going to be honest here. I'm usually for the conversations around the unfair treatment of Black people, Black athletes, and, comparing things. But the only reason Rex Ryan or anybody else would have had an additional conversation about Shedeur Sanders is because Shedeur Sanders was expected to be a first-round draft pick, and he was expected to be able to lead an NFL franchise. So his behavior is a lot more under the microscope than somebody who will go on and coach high school football more than likely, right? We don't have to break down Diego Pavia's character to see how it translates on a professional level while he's making millions of dollars. So yeah, when you're in line to do the things that Shedeur Sanders is in line to do, people are going to be a lot more critical of your personality, your characteristics and attributes to figure out if and how it makes sense at the next level. I think people were hard on Shedeur. Yes, I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I'm saying is we can't compare Diego to Shedeur because one is going to continue to play football and the other is going to go sell cars.
In his mind, he thinks that he's going to.
We're talking about what's actually going to happen. He's not. Shedeur Sanders was expected to be no worse than the second drafted quarterback in last year's draft. Now, obviously, that did not happen. But Diego is not expected to be in the NFL, so we don't have to give him but so much attention because we don't have to break down his character because he's not in consideration to go on to the next chapter of life. It's like if you're dating someone, right, and you start to see behaviors that you try to correct, but then you realize ultimately this is not my long-term partner anyway. So I don't really got to spend too much energy on you. When they start doing dumb shit and you're no longer in the relationship, I don't have to address the past. I ain't got to focus on what you're doing over there because you're not coming over here with me next anyway. Who cares?
Yeah, that sounds good. But at the end of the day, he shouldn't have done that. He knows now that he shouldn't have done that. It doesn't look good. Like I mentioned earlier, that's going to be the focus.
You know where being outspoken gets you in 2025? It gets you potentially to be the president of the United States, saying how you actually feel without worrying about muzzling yourself. It gets you far in life. Anyway, we are obviously going to disagree on this. Y'all let us know your thoughts on Diego Pavia's statements saying F the voters and all the other things that people seem to be up in arms about. Do you feel like he was in the wrong? Or is it nice to see a young man live his truth?
Please don't listen to Rodney. Please be PC or whatever that means. Politically correct. Is that what that means? Okay, yeah. Please be that.